Namaste and welcome to Daily News Simplified, the what, why, and how of newspaper reading. Now we would be analyzing the Delhi edition of the Hindu newspaper of 6th of November 2018, and the news that would be covered today is given on the screen, and the timestamp for the same is given in the description and the comment section given below. Now, as you already know, that we're discussing some of the questions that were asked in the mains examination of 2018, and the question that we would be discussing today is from GS paper 2, wherein the question was asked in the context of Central Asia and the Ashgabat Agreement. Now, the first thing that you need to understand is why was Central Asia and the Ashgabat Agreement asked in the mains examination of 2018. Now, as you already might be aware of, this question falls under the purview of GS paper 2 within the section International Relations and within the subsection India and its Neighborhood Relations, wherein this question specifically asks India's relation with Central Asia. However, the question still remains as to why was Central Asia asked in the mains examination of 2018. Now, as you already might be aware of, the mains examination syllabus was changed from the year 2013 onwards. So if you take a look at the GS paper 2 of 2013, a question was asked with regards to the US withdrawal from Afghanistan and how that would impact India's strategic interest within Afghanistan. Similarly, a question was asked with regards to the protest in Bangladesh and how it would impact India. Similarly, the political developments in Maldives and how that would impact India. And lastly, a question was asked on how the domestic factors affect India-Sri Lanka relations. Now, all of these four questions were asked in the context of India and its neighborhood relations. However, what is more significant to understand is that all of these four countries are part of South Asia. And so, therefore, in the GS paper 2 of 2013, questions were asked specifically with India's relation with South Asian countries or with the South Asian neighborhood. While with regards to GS paper 2 of 2014, a question was asked in the context of South China Sea and how the disputes in the South China Sea affect the bilateral issues between India and China. So within the context of the syllabus, India and its neighborhood relations, a question was asked with regards to the relations between India and China, specifically within the context of South China Sea. While a question was asked in GS paper 2 of 2015 with regards to Project Mosam and how it could improve India's relationship with its neighbor. And so therefore with regards to the syllabus of India and its neighborhood relations, the question that was asked in GS paper 2 of 2014 asked India's relationship with countries within the Indian Ocean region. While in the GS paper 2 of 2016, a question was asked with regards to India's Look East policy and its various economic and strategic dimensions. Now you already know that India's Look East policy or the Act East policy are specifically designed for India's relationship with Southeast Asian countries and East Asian countries. While in the GS paper 2 of 2017, a question was asked with regards to India's energy security and energy policy cooperation with West Asian countries. And therefore, with regards to the syllabus context of India and its neighborhood relations, the question asked in GS paper 2 of 2017 focused upon West Asia, specifically with regards to energy trade and energy security. So now with this, we come to GS paper 2 of 2018, where a question was asked with regards to Central Asia. Now you need to understand that questions on South Asia, China, maritime neighbors, Southeast Asia, East Asia, West Asia had already been asked in your UPSC mains examination. And the one major neighborhood that was remaining to be asked in the mains examination was Central Asia. And so therefore it was highly expected that a question on Central Asia can be asked in the mains examination of 2018. And as we continue to tell you that questions that were asked in the previous year examination of either prelims or mains, they provide a strong cue as to which question can be asked in the upcoming mains examination. And therefore by looking at GS paper 2 in specific to India and its neighborhood relation from 2013 to 2017 onwards, it was strongly expected that a question on Central Asia might be asked in the mains examination of 2018. Now apart from this, what else had happened was that India became a member first of the Ashgabat Agreement. Apart from this, India also became a member of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization in the year 2017, wherein India's membership to both the Ashgabat Agreement and the Shanghai Cooperation Organization improved India's relationship with Central Asia. Now apart from this, the Chabahar port that India is jointly making with Iran has also opened up in the year 2017. When the Chabahar port intends to improve India's trade relationship with Central Asia. So now hopefully with all of these points you have understood as to why Central Asia was asked in the mains examination of 2018. Now after this, let us understand as to what was the context of the question. Now the question reads, a number of outside powers have entrenched themselves in Central Asia, which is a zone of interest to India. Discuss the implication in this context of India joining the Ashgabat Agreement of 2018. Now the first context of the question is the number of outside powers that are currently present in Central Asia. The second context of the question is how Central Asia is a zone of interest to India. The third aspect that the question asks is discuss the implications on how the presence of outside powers in Central Asia have affected Central Asia as being a zone of interest to India, wherein one of the implications that you had to discuss was India joining the Ashgabat Agreement. Now, on the face of it, this question seems complicated. However, if you break down the question to its various contexts, it becomes easier to answer. Wherein, let's take an example that one of the outside powers in Central Asia is China, and China has been able to entrench itself in Central Asia through the Belt and Road Initiative. And now, one of the aspects that China wants through the Belt and Road Initiative in Central Asia is to connect the Central Asian countries to the Indian Ocean through the CPEC project. Wherein, as you already know, that the CPEC project is part of the Belt Road Initiative of China. Wherein, if you take a look at this map, the CPEC project runs from the Gwadar port to the Kashgar region in China. And what China intends to do is connect the various Central Asian countries or Central Asian cities such as Tashkent and other parts with the CPEC project, and thereby connecting the Central Asian countries to the Indian Ocean through the Gwadar port. However, what is happening is that India has formed the Chabahar port in collaboration with Iran, and India wants to connect the Central Asian countries to the Indian Ocean through the Chabahar port. And therefore, both of these become aspects of outside powers and of zone of interest, of which you have to discuss the implications of. And one of the ways in which you had to discuss the implication was by referring to the Ashgabat Agreement. Now, if you take a look at the March edition of the Focus magazine, in which we had covered the Ashgabat Agreement. Now, the Ashgabat Agreement intends for the establishment of an international transport and transit corridor among Iran, Oman, Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan, and this Ashgabat Agreement came in force in 2011, when the objective of the Ashgabat Agreement is to link Central Asia with the Persian Gulf by forming an international transport and transit corridor. And India became a member of the Ashgabat Agreement in the year 2018. So hopefully by knowing as to what is the Ashgabat Agreement, you understand on how it can help in achieving India's objective of connecting Central Asia to the Indian Ocean through the Chabahar port, wherein India can use the membership of the Ashgabat Agreement and have countries such as Oman, Iran, Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan, Kazakhstan and others connecting their transport corridors to the Chabahar port rather than the CPEC project. And therefore, with the help of the Ashgabat Agreement, India can ensure that the Central Asian countries would be more interested in connecting with the Chabahar port rather than the CPEC project. And therefore, this is one of the aspects for answering this question, wherein under this aspect, you have highlighted all the four contexts of the question. And in similar terms, you can also talk about Russia as being one of the outside powers in Central Asia, the United States being one of the outside powers in Central Asia, and how their presence is affecting India's interest in the Central Asian region. So now hopefully you've understood the context of the question. Now let us understand on how you can prepare for such questions. Now with regards to the Focus magazine, you already are aware of that the Ashgabat Agreement was covered in the March edition. When if you take a look at the September edition of the Focus magazine, India's outreach to Central Asia was covered, wherein it had covered the various means of interaction between India and Central Asia, such as the Connect Central Asia policy, the Ashgabat Agreement, the INSTEC corridor, and the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. And apart from this, the section also provided various opportunities and concerns with regards to India's relationship with Central Asia. Now, apart from the Focus magazine, if you take a look at the QIP program or the Quality Improvement program that is provided just prior to the mains examination, especially within the context of international relations and internal security, a question was asked: evaluate the strategic and economic dimensions of India's growing engagement with the Central Asian region, wherein the QIP booklet also provided as to what would be the recommended structure for the answer, facts and concept to cite in the answer, which included reference to the Ashgabat Agreement, Shanghai Cooperation Organization, and the INSTEC corridor. Now, what you can do with regards to your preparation for your mains examination is try to answer this question. And what I'll provide is the recommended structure for the answer and facts and concept to cite in the answer that we had provided in the QIP booklet within the PDF of the news that has been covered today. And this is one of the way where we can try to help you further with regards to your preparation for your mains examination. Now finally, if you again take a look at the mains examination of 2018, more specifically with regards to GS paper 2, specifically within the section International Relations, there were 4 questions that were asked within the subject of International Relations within GS paper 2, wherein all of these 4 questions were covered in your Focus magazine, Daily News Simplified, and the Quality Improvement Program that is given just prior to the mains examination. And therefore, with the help of the Focus magazine, DNS, and QIP, you would have been able to understand and answer all the 4 questions that were asked within the section of International Relations within GS Paper 2. Where you can refer to the Daily News Simplified of 26th of October, where we had the mains discussion with regards to the question on India-Israel relationship, wherein in today's DNS, wherein we had the mains discussion with regards to the question asked on Central Asia and the Ashgabat Agreement, wherein the mains discussion with regards to the question on World Trade Organization and its reform was undertaken in the DNS of 25th of October, and in similar terms, the mains discussion with regards to the question on the US-Iran nuclear pact controversy was undertaken in the DNS of 29th of October, wherein what you can do is review all of these 4 main discussion videos and understand on how you can prepare for questions that are asked in the subject of international relations and how DNS, the Focus magazine, and the Quality Improvement Program can help you with this preparation. And so now with this, let us start in the evaluation of the first news for today. Now we have taken this article from page 1. Now what we'll try to understand from this article are various aspects with regards to INS Arihant, and after that we'll try to understand as to what is a nuclear triad. Now the first fact that you need to know was that INS Arihant was inducted into the Indian Navy in 2016. And INS Arihant forms and completes India's nuclear triad, where INS Arihant is capable of launching ballistic nuclear missiles. Now this capability of launching nuclear missiles places INS Arihant as a strategic strike nuclear submarine. Now apart from this, what you should also remember is that INS Arihant is India's first indigenous nuclear powered submarine belonging to the Arihant class. And this made India the first country out of the permanent 5 nations, which are the United States, Russia, China, France, and United Kingdom, to possess an indigenous nuclear powered submarine. Now, by having the submarine powered by nuclear energy, it allows the submarine to stay underwater for longer durations. Now, wherein what happens with diesel powered submarine is that they have to come above water first to release the excess carbon dioxide that has been formed in the submarine from the burning of diesel, and secondly, to also refuel. However, by having a submarine powered by nuclear energy, it allows for the submarine to stay underwater for longer duration. Now, what you should also remember is that INS Arihant carries Sagarika K-15 submarine launched ballistic missiles. Now, INS Arihant also has underwater ballistic missile launch capability. When what happens in some submarine is that they have to surface above the water to launch ballistic missiles. However, if these submarines come above the water, it increases the chance of being detected by radars or by enemy naval or air force units. Now, the Sagarika K-15 submarine launched ballistic missile generally have a range of over 700 km. And the last aspect that you need to understand from this is that INS Aridhaman is going to be the next strategic strike nuclear submarine of India. Now these are the several facts that you need to remember with regards to INS Arihant. And so after this, let us understand as to what is a nuclear triad. Now a nuclear triad consists of a 3 military force structure with nuclear delivery capability, wherein the first structure would be of land-launched nuclear missiles, the second structure would be of a nuclear missile armed submarine, and the third and the final structure would be of a nuclear missile armed aircraft. And these 3 military structures form what is called the nuclear triad, wherein we are able to launch nuclear missiles through land, underwater, and through air. So now hopefully you've understood the basic features of INS Arihant and also understood as to what is a nuclear triad. Now previously a question was asked in the prelims of 2016, when the question had asked as to which one of the following is the best description of INS Astradhani that was in the news recently. And the correct answer to this question would have been C, torpedo launch and recovery vessel. And therefore, it is within that similar context that the basic facts about INS Arihant should be known with regards to your upcoming prelims examination of 2019. And within that context, a question for your practice is which of the following are considered to be contributors in forming India's nuclear triad? And the correct answer to this question would be provided in the end section of this video. And so now with this, let us move on to the next article. Now I've taken this article from the editorial page on page 8. Now what this article talks about is that the 100-year celebration of Armistice Day, or the day when the hostilities between the Allies and the Axis powers during World War I ended. And this Armistice Day is celebrated on 11th of November. And this celebration will be held in France. Now, as you already might be aware of, millions of Indian soldiers participated in World War I, and a war memorial is being made for those Indians that fought and died during World War I is being formed in the country of Belgium, wherein what had happened was that around 130,000 Indian soldiers fought in freeing Belgium from German control. And it is within that context that the war memorial to recognize the sacrifice of the Indian soldiers that fought in World War I is being formed in the country of Belgium. Now, apart from this, what else this article highlights is the various impacts that World War I had on India. Now, most of the Indian leaders during World War I, such as Bal Gangadhar Tilak, Mahatma Gandhi, supported the British government in the war efforts during World War I. Now, what most of the Indian independence leaders had thought of was that by supporting the British effort during World War I, the British government would allow self-government in India. However, apart from this, several revolutionary groups such as the Ghadar movement used the pretext of World War I to wage a war against the British government in India. And therefore, to curb these revolutionary movements, especially the Ghadar movement, the British India government passed the Defence of India Act of 1915. Now, apart from this, various revolutionaries such as Lala Hardayal, Bhupender Nath Datta, Virendra Nath Chattopadhyay, and others formed what was the Berlin Committee for Indian Independence, and thereby took the help of Germany under what was called the Zimmermann Plan. Now, what had happened was that the Germany government had captured various prisoners of wars that were of Indian origin who were fighting on the behalf of the British government. And what the revolutionaries such as Lala Hardayal wanted under the Zimmermann Plan was that the prisoners of war that were of Indian origin can be utilized to fight against the British government in India. And this came to be known as the Berlin Committee on Independence and the Zimmermann Plan. Now, apart from this, the British India government also increased taxes, customs to finance its expenditure during World War I. And this financing of the expenditure of World War I through economic exploitation of India through the raising of taxes, customs, led to very high inflation within India and also to scarcity of resources within India. However, what happened after the British Empire won World War I? They did not allow any form of self-government to India. And so when the World War II broke out during the 1940s, the Indian leaders did not support the British government in their war efforts during World War II. And the various Indian leaders such as Jawaharlal Nehru, Subhash Chandra Bose and others opposed the war efforts of the British government during World War II. Since the Indian leaders had understood that the British government cannot be trusted to repay India with any form of self-government or independence after World War II. Now, these are the four main points that have been highlighted in the article with regards to the impact of World War I on India. Wherein the first point is that the Indian leaders such as Mahatma Gandhi, Bal Gangadhar Tilak supported the British war efforts during World War I, wherein they had hoped that the British government would repay India with self-government. However, after the British Empire won World War I, the British government did not allow India any form of self-government. And Indian leaders learned this lesson from World War I, and so during World War II, they did not support any form of British war efforts, wherein leaders such as Mahatma Gandhi, Subhash Chandra Bose opposed the British war efforts during World War II. Apart from this, various revolutionary groups such as the Ghadar movement utilized the World War I to oppose the British India, wherein the British India government passed the Defence of India Act of 1915 to curb the revolutionary movement, in specific the Ghadar movement. Apart from this, a Berlin Committee on India's Independence and a Zimmermann Plan was formed by various revolutionaries under the leadership of Lala Hardayal Bhupendranath Datta, who, with the help of the German government, formed what was the Zimmermann Plan, wherein what had happened was that the German government had captured various prisoners of war which were of Indian origin that were fighting on behalf of the British government. And what the Indian revolutionaries wanted was that these prisoners of war can be handed over to the revolutionaries and then they can fight against the British government. And the last aspect with regards to the impact of World War I on India was that the British government financed World War I through the economic exploitation of India, wherein they had imposed high taxes, shifted large amount of resources from India to the British, and all of this led to very high inflation within India. However, what is happening now is that there is a 100-year celebration of Armistice Day, which is being held on 11th of November, wherein this was the day when the hostilities between the Allies and the Axis powers ended, and within that context, a war memorial in recognition of the Indian soldiers that fought on behalf of the British government during World War I is being formed in the country of Belgium. Now, question for your practice is which of the following memorials was built in recognition of Indian soldiers who fought in World War I? And the correct answer to this question would be given in the end section of this video. And so now with this, let us move on to the next article. Now we have taken the lead editorial from the editorial page on page 8. Now you have to understand that this article talks about the nuclear taboo theory. And large portions of this article are relevant for those who are preparing for the optional subject of political science and international relations. Wherein this nuclear taboo theory, which was given by Nina Tannenwald, should be seen by those who are preparing for the optional subject of political science and international relations. And apart from this, the section of politics of negotiations, which gives an in-depth analysis on how the negotiations for the Intermediate Nuclear Force Treaty or the INF Treaty was done, should also be seen by the students who are preparing for the optional subject of political science and international relations. Now, we would not be analyzing this article from the perspective of the optional subject, so what we'll do is try to simplify this editorial so that it becomes relevant with regards to your GS paper. Now, the first thing that you need to understand is the context of the article. Now, what has happened is that the United States President Donald Trump is considering withdrawing from the Intermediate Nuclear Forces Treaty or the INF Treaty. Now, this INF Treaty was signed during the Cold War, and this treaty was signed between the United States and the Soviet Union in the year 1987. And the main objective of this treaty was to ban the development, testing, possession of short and medium range ground launched nuclear missiles. However, what is happening now is that the United States President Donald Trump is considering withdrawing from the INF Treaty, when the United States has given two reasons as to why it is withdrawing from the treaty. First, the United States has alleged that Russia is developing the SSC-8 missile, and the United States considered the development of this missile as a violation of the INF Treaty. However, Russia has denied that it is developing the SSC-8 missile. And the second reason given by the United States for withdrawing from the INF Treaty is because of the rise of China. And China is developing and is in possession of short and medium range ground launched nuclear missiles. And the United States wants to withdraw from the treaty so that it will allow the United States a new weapon options against China in the Indo-Pacific region. So now hopefully you've understood the context of the article. Now let us understand the various cause of concerns that have been highlighted by the author if the United States withdraws from the INF Treaty. Now the first cause of concern that has been highlighted by the author is that the US withdrawal from the INF Treaty may lead to an arms race between the United States and Russia and between the United States and China. Wherein what would happen is that if the United States withdrew from the INF Treaty, Russia would not be any more confined to the INF Treaty, and therefore Russia would also be able to develop, test, and possess short and medium range ground launched nuclear missiles. And similarly, if the United States uses short and medium range ground launched nuclear missiles within the Indo Pacific region, it would also lead for China to develop such weapons. And therefore, according to the author, this may trigger an arms race between the United States and Russia and China. The second cause of concern highlighted by the author is that this US decision to withdraw may also lead to the scaling back of other nuclear control treaties. Now, what the author has raised a concern with is that the United States and Russia signed the New START Treaty in 2010, or what is called the New Strategic Arms Reduction Treaty, and this treaty is supposed to last till 2021. However, what the authors fear is that the United States may withdraw from the New START treaty and thereby weaken the structure of nuclear control. And therefore, as a measure against these concerns, the author has recommended that the global community should maintain the nuclear taboo. Wherein nuclear taboo, in simple terms, is an international norm that stigmatizes or disapproves of the use of nuclear weapons, and the stigmatization or the disapproval is mainly achieved through moral persuasions. Wherein what has happened is that the global community, especially non nuclear powers, have built up pressure on the nuclear powers not to use their nuclear weapons. And therefore, the author has recommended that the global community should continue to maintain the nuclear taboo on the United States so that it does not withdraw or weaken the nuclear control treaties. So, now hopefully, you've understood the crux of this article. Now, let us understand as to where this would be placed in your UPSC syllabus. Wherein this article and the explanation given in this section would first be placed in GS Paper 2 within the section International Relations, and apart from this, it would also be placed in GS Paper 3 within the section Security. And apart from this, you should also see the INF Treaty and the New START Treaty from the perspective of your upcoming prelims examination of 2019, wherein the current event of the US expected withdrawal from the INF Treaty makes both the INF Treaty and the New START Treaty of international importance. Now, a question for your practice is consider the following statements on the INF Treaty, and the correct answer to this question would be given in the end section of this video. And so now with this, let us move on to the next article. Now we have taken this article from page 18. Now what this article talks about is the impact of the wind farms or windmills on its local ecosystem. Now you have to understand that this is the third article this year that has appeared in the Hindu newspaper, which highlights the various environmental impact on the usage of windmills or of wind farms. So what we'll do is try to add the points that have appeared in the earlier articles and again revise on how windmills affect the local ecosystem. Now the first environmental impact is that there is a decrease in the rodent population in the area. Now the reason there is a decrease in the rodent population is because of a loss of habitat due to the clearing of land for the formation of windmills. And the second reason for the decrease in rodent population is because the usage of windmill produces a lot of land vibrations. And these land vibrations move the rodent away from the area where the windmill is located. Now the second environmental impact of windmills is that it increases the mortalities of bird. Now there is an increase in bird mortality in areas near windmills, first due to the head-on collisions between birds and windmills, and secondly due to the loss of prey for birds. And the third and the final environmental impact of windmills, as given in both of the article, is that there is a disturbance to the local food chain, wherein windmills cause a lot of noise pollution, and because of this, a lot of prey such as rodents, small mammals move away from this area. When the article has given an example that a windmill gives roughly around 85 decibels of noise, which is equivalent to large trucks. And this movement of prey such as rodents, small mammals away from the area of windmills has caused major disturbances to the local food chain. So now hopefully up till here you understood the three main environmental impact of windmills. Wherein the first main environmental impact of windmill is that it leads to a decrease in the rodent population. And this rodent population decreases due to the loss of their habitat from the clearing of land for windmill. And secondly, that windmills produce a lot of land vibrations. And because of this land vibration, it drives away the small rodents. Now the second environmental impact of windmill is that it increases the bird mortality, wherein there is an increase in the death of birds within the area of windmills, first due to head-on collisions, and secondly due to the loss of prey. And the third and the final environmental impact of windmill is that it leads to a disturbance to the local food chain, wherein first due to noise pollution and secondly due to land vibrations, windmills cause the movement of prey away from the area of windmills. And this movement of prey such as small rodents away from the area of windmills causes major disturbances to the local food chain. So now hopefully you've understood the three main environmental impact of windmills that were given in both the articles. Now let us understand as to where this would be placed in your UPSC syllabus. Now with regards to your prelims examination, the environmental impact of windmills would be placed in the section General Issues on Environmental Ecology. And with regards to your mains examination, it would be placed in GS Paper 3 within the section Environment and within the subsection Environmental Impact Assessment. Now previously a question has been asked in your UPSC mains examination, wherein this question was asked in GS Paper 3 within the year 2014, which had asked that the environmental impact assessment studies are increasingly undertaken before a project is cleared by the government. discuss the environmental impacts of coal-fired thermal plants located at coal pit heads. Wherein a similar question for a practice would be discuss the environmental impact of windmills located in forested areas. Now, question for a practice is which of the following are considered as detrimental impact of windmills? And the correct answer to this question would be given in the end section of this video. And so now with this, let us move on to the next article. Now we have taken this article from the editorial page on page 9. Now what this article provides is an analysis of the recent findings of the National Sample Survey Office or the NSSO in its labor force survey. Now this article mainly focuses on the findings of the survey with regards to Muslims in India. Now you should see this article first from the perspective of your GS paper 1 within the section Society. First within the aspect of salient features of Indian society, poverty and development issues, and also from the perspective of social empowerment. And apart from this, you should also see this article from the perspective of GS paper 2 within the section Social Justice. Within the section Issues relating to development and management of social sector services relating to human resources and issues relating to poverty. Now before starting and understanding this article, what you should remember is that this article contains various quantitative figures. However, it is not required for you to remember or write down any of these figures, and these figures should largely be seen in understanding the various assertions or the points that have been made by the authors. Now this article highlights the conditions of poverty among Indian Muslims. Now the authors have said that the reason for poverty among Indian Muslims is due to their low education and low participation in the workforce. And the authors have made these assertions based on the analysis of the 60th round report of the NSSO Labour Force Survey of 2011 and 12. Now, according to the author, the education level among Indian Muslims is one of the lowest among all the religious communities, wherein the largest number of illiterate people is highest among the Muslim community. Wherein, according to the authors, the number of Muslims over the age of 15 years who have obtained education up to the primary level and the middle school level is the lowest among any of the religious communities. And therefore, according to the author, the distribution of the Muslim population is least at the highest levels of education and is also the highest at the lower levels of education. It means that if you take a look at the people who have graduate degrees, postgraduate degrees, and PhDs, the Muslim community have the lowest representation. And apart from this, according to the authors, the current attendance rate among Muslim community is least across all religious groups, wherein the number of males from the Muslim community which are attending educational institution in urban area is the smallest in the Muslim community. And so with regards to this, the authors have given a relation between the low attendance among Muslim community in educational institutions and their low income level, wherein according to the author, the Muslims community have one of the lowest attendance and therefore have one of the lowest educational attainment levels also. And therefore because of this, their income level is also low. And because their income level is also low, they're not able to attend educational institution or improve their educational attainment. And therefore this has become what is called a vicious circle, wherein low education qualification leads to low income level, and this low income level hampers the ability of the Muslim community to attain better educational qualification. And therefore the average per capita consumption expenditure, which is used as an indicator of income, is lowest among Muslims among all the religious groups. With regards to the low income level and the low educational level, wherein first the lack of higher education is adversely affecting their job indicators, and therefore the Muslim community has a low labor force participation. And therefore, because they have low education, the Muslim community finds it much harder to find a job, and even in those jobs, they have one of the lowest income for any religious community. And because of this low income, they also have one of the lowest consumption expenditure. And therefore the number of Muslims employed in regular job, and in similar terms the number of Muslim females employed in regular jobs, is the lowest among all other religious communities. And therefore according to the author, the central and state government need to take steps to help Indian Muslims escape their vicious cycle of poverty. And therefore the authors have recommended that the Muslim community should be provided special incentive and subsidy for higher education. And apart from this, vocational courses should also be provided to those adults which had missed out on primary or secondary level education. So now hopefully you understood the various points made by the author in this editorial. And so now with this, let us move on to the next article. Now we have taken this article from the editorial page on page 8. Now what had happened was that the Supreme Court of India, in an earlier decision of 2015, had asked the Reserve Bank of India to disclose the name of willful defaulters on bank loans. And the Supreme Court had asked the Reserve Bank of India to name the willful defaulters under the RTI Act of 2005. And therefore, what has now happened is that the Central Information Commissioner has asked the Prime Minister Office, the Finance Ministry, and the Reserve Bank of India to make public the letter that the former RBI Governor Raghuram Rajan had given on bad loans. Now, what had happened was that Raghuram Rajan, who was the former RBI Governor, had given a list of willful defaulters to the Prime Minister's office. And now the Chief Information Commissioner has said that the Supreme Court in 2015 had given out a ruling to the Reserve Bank of India to name the willful defaulters. However, the Reserve Bank of India till date has not released the names of the willful defaulters. And therefore, the Chief Information Commissioner has given a show cause notice to the RBI Governor. And the Chief Information Commissioner has asked the RBI Governor as to why penalty should not be imposed on the RBI Governor for disobeying the directives of the Supreme Court, wherein the Chief Information Commissioner has stated that the RBI Governor is duty bound to comply with the provisions of the RTI Act of 2005, and therefore the RBI has to disclose the information that has been sought by the Chief Information Commissioner with regards to willful defaulters. And it is within that context that the Chief Information Commissioner has also cited the 2015 ruling of the Supreme Court, which had also asked the Reserve Bank of India to name the willful defaulters under the RTI Act of 2005. Now you have to understand that this news is currently in transition, and therefore we'll have to wait and see on how this issue moves forward. But hopefully you've understood the basic crux of this recent tussle between the CIC and the RBI. And so now with this, let us move on to the next article. Now we've taken this article from page 18. Now what this article talks about is the ozone layer and the Montreal Protocol. Now the importance of the ozone layer has already been covered in the Daily News Simplified of 17th of May. And apart from this, the Daily News Simplified of 17th May also gives an explanation with regards to the Vienna Convention for Protection of Ozone Layer and also provides a comparison between the Montreal Protocol and the Kigali Agreement. And what you can do is refer to the Daily News Simplified of 17th of May, whose link is given in the description section given below, to understand all of these aspects. And now with this, we come to an end in the analysis of today's newspaper. Now there would not be any Daily News Simplified or DNS on 7th, 8th and 9th of November due to the Diwali break. However, what we'll do is cover the important topics that may appear in the DNS of 10th of November. And now with this, I would like to wish you all a happy Diwali on behalf of the Rouse Focus and the DNS team. And so now with this, let us move on to the question for today.